Okay, here's our video on simple interest. And simple interest is just the interest that the bank will give you if you put money in the bank. Like when you deposit money. Remember, the word deposit is when you put money in the bank, and the bank will give you an interest rate, a simple interest rate, at the end of the year. So here's some words we should know. Principal. Now, this isn't the principal of the school. Principal is the amount of money you deposit in the bank, or it's the amount of money you borrow. And there's a formula that we need to know. Here's the formula. It's interest equals principal times the rate times the time. Right? So this is interest, I. This is the principal. It's the amount you borrow. The rate is the rate they're charging. Let's say they were charging 3% or 4%. And the time, the amount of time. Let's say it was 5 years. Right? You multiply all this and you'll get the interest. So let's do an example. Let's say you borrow $400 from the bank for 6 years at a rate of 5%. So again, remember the formula. The interest equals the principal, what you borrow, times the rate, times time. So we have the principal, it's $400. We have the rate, 5%. And we have the time, 6 years. See if you can find an answer to that. So we had $400. Right, we're going to have interest equals $400. The rate is 5%. Remember, we have to move it and make it a decimal. 0.05 is 5%. Times 6. Right, and if we multiply that together, we'll have an interest rate of $120. At the end of the 6 years, you'll pay the bank $120. Right? Let's try another one. Let's say that you borrow $10,000 for 5 years at a rate of 3%. See if you can do that one. Okay, remember the formula. The interest equals principal times the rate times time. And it really doesn't matter which order you put it in because it's multiplication, and you know multiplication is commutative. So we have the principal. We have $10,000. That's the principal. That's the amount we borrowed. We're timesing it by the rate of 0.03. The rate is 0.03. Let's get that up there. And the time is 5 years. So you multiply that together. At the end of 5 years, you'll pay the bank $1,500. Pick that up, $1,500. Okay. We can also graph. Right, let's graph. Let's say that you don't borrow, but you deposit. You put money in the bank. You put $700 in the bank at a rate of 3.2%. How much will you make? How much interest will you make after 1 year? Remember, you need to move this percent twice. 1, 2. So you get 0.032. That's your rate. The principal, the amount you deposited was $700. We just want it for 1 year. How much will you make? Here's a graph. You can graph it, right? After 1 year, you made $22.40. Now, if you take the money out every year you keep the principal in, so every year, as long as the rate stays the same, you'll get the same amount each year. So if the second year will be $44.80, that's how much you made. But again, remember, you took money out. Let's say you take money out every year. You're still getting $22.40 every year. But this is what you would have had after 2 years. Here's our last question. Let's say you borrow $500 at 18% annual simple interest. How much interest do you owe in 6 months? How much do you owe in 6 months? It's a little tricky. First, remember, it's annual simple interest. So let's find out how much you will owe in a year. Now, if you know how much you're going to owe in a year, all you have to do is just divide it by 2, and that's 6 months. Right? See if you can do that problem. Well, we know the principal, the amount you borrowed, is $500. The rate is 18%, 0.18. And we're just borrowing for a year. So at the end of the year, we know that the interest will be $90, but the question said, how much in 6 months? Well, what's half of 90? 6 months is half a year. So you'll owe $45 in 6 months. Okay, that's simple interest. Here's one more, though. This one, I know I said before that was the last question, but this one is an interesting question that actually will come up sometime. So let's look at this. It says, let's say you borrow $2,000 for 8 years, and you receive at the end $2,720. So in this question, you already know how much you're going to get at the end of 8 years. But the question here is, what was the rate? What was the rate? How could we find the rate? Here's the question again. How do you think you can do this? Again, still think of the formula. Interest equals principal times rate times time. All right, let's break this down. If you made $2,720 at the end of 8 years, and your principal was $2,000, you know your interest was $720. You know you made an interest, actually that's what you owe, $720. Your principal was $2,000, that's what you put in, that's what you borrowed. We're trying to find the rate, it's R, and the time is 8 years. So let's do some algebra here. We have 720, and let's clean this up. 2,000 times 8, remember multiplication is commutative, it doesn't matter how you multiply it. So you're going to have 16,000 R. We don't know what R is. So here we have a algebraic problem. It's a one-step algebraic problem. Again, we want R by itself, so we're going to divide the 16,000. Remember in algebra, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. We're going to divide 16,000 on this side. And that will give us what R is. And remember, the top number is always in the box. So it's 16,000 divided by 720. And when you divide that out, you'll get 0.045. Remember to move it twice, and you'll get 4.5%. Okay, great job.